fix the school, so you haven't fixed the school.
We cannot fix the school.
I'm asking Joba Slela, siyakhuluma about fixing University of Zululand, WSU, Forte. Joba Slela, forget politicians, forget business, Tina. If we're not willing to send our kids there, if we're not willing to send our kids with Bafundekas, if we're not willing to take that 7,000 from a private tutor and say, pump it into the school, then what are we doing here? And who are we expecting to change? Because it means we're also just going to keep getting privilege and the kid from Limpopo and from Emadati, but we're actually just bullshitting.
I wouldn't call it bullshitting, because yes, there is a level of hypocrisy. Sure, we agree. And we are sleeping on silk linen. So my kids are very, very privileged as well. They're in a very great space. Utupak says, I might not be the change, but I might spark the, so it has to start somewhere, Lungel. So it's
but
not.
Tupac sparked it. Now, why are we not the change?
No, we're trying every day. So, for example, we are educating the masses. We're doing a lot better than those that are just sitting in spaces by themselves.
Were educating us. About Marcus Garvey, for how long?
He did. He chose a career in teaching.
I'm saying. So I'm saying.
He was teaching in private schools.
Yes, and in private schools, there's black kids that also don't have it as well as white kids.
And that need a black
face outside of Uputo Sebenzengatini or Antosiza Kishin. They need a face of power, someone who can actually articulate and assist them. Because even in those
humanize them.
And humanize them. Because even in those privileged spaces, they still struggle to make the first 11 cricket team because of how they look like. Because his dad might not have played cricket and his dad doesn't know how to be part of that system. So having us as their fathers, as their mothers who actually teach, siyakwazi assist a little bit more than our white colleagues. So again, I might not be Steve Biko, or I might not be that guy who manages and transform. But what I can do is that I can lend my voice, and start doing visits as Supercell and start talking to kids and motivating kids and building kids and doing the little that I can. If I do that and you do that and those guys do that and she does that, all of a sudden there should be some sort of snowball effect.
What your brother's alluding to is that the failure of this trickle-down system that we have sort of believed in. You know what I mean? That maybe if I can make it up there, I can open up opportunities for a few other children who will then be able to open up opportunities for other children. But what we're seeing is that more and more children are being excluded. More and more children are being left behind. Only 30% of those that start grade 1, 12 years later, then finally matriculate or even qualify to have a university qualification or, even a spot.
100%. It is getting worse. You're very right.
It's getting worse. So, if we're looking at 70% of the ones that are being left behind and only 30% make it, we cannot expect them to lift everybody else. I mean, our tax base as a country is also shrinking. We're now less than 7% of the country is actually contributing to our fiscus, and that has to support, the poorer 90% of the population, and the problem is getting worse. That's what Upenwal is saying, and we're not doing enough. You're right, and we need to admit that.
To you as well. The same question about would you send your children to these spaces? Would you send your child to a township school? If not, who is the we and what are we supposed to be doing?
It's a very, very good question, by the way, Penuel. And I like the fact that you're holding all of us accountable, including our viewers out there. Mina, personally, I think for those who know the work that I've done over the past 15 years, and that was intentional. For me, when I started being in my 20s and started doing well in entertainment, I opted the route of existing in schools. And some people even say they attribute something I don't care about, relevance. They attribute my relevance to this day to the fact that those kids that I used to go to, they're now family members, they're now CEOs, or they're now working, a lot of them. I've been to over 900 schools.
That's dope. That's too crazy.
Not only just talk, I've been to 900 schools. Yes, guys, for a period of 15 years of my life, I used to go to at least 1 or 2 schools every week. Not only doing motivational talks, but speaking to government. Eguruleni municipality, I don't know how many bursaries we've put pressure on the Eguruleni government to give to kids. I remember a program we once did. Shout outs to my sister Faith Mangope. It's so good seeing you on TV now. At some point, you were my producer. You were working behind the scenes, making me shine, writing all my scripts, organizing my shows, producing everything that I used to. I was just that voice that used to speak on the mic. But Faith used to do the hard work of getting companies to chip in even just registration fees. I remember at some point we organized over 300 students, just registration fees, that came from a company called Busa. Is it Busa or Bisa? B-U-S-A, Bursary something of South Africa. And I want to give them, I want to applaud them if they're still around, if they still exist. And I was existing in all of those spaces, in all of those programs. I remember Umama Enji Mutsecha at the time in the province. She was the one who was the head. And I remember Upanyaza at some point was still serving under her.
Panyaza Lisufi.
Yes, and now he's a Prima of Gauteng. I remember the countless work, and I want to shout out the Sibusiso Lope Education Foundation team, because all of that work that we did for countless years, nobody was paying us. It was just from the goodness of our heart to contribute. Feeding scheme programs, bursaries, scholarships, loans at some time. At some point, we had to pop out some of our own money to help out. And at some point, some of the kids who would take the initiative of inviting us to their institutions or to their high schools, who were SRC presidents or who were in the leadership, some of those kids, we saw potential in them that we pulled them through. And I know some of them were doing well. I know Kutlwana Modise, my boy, who's always making me proud. Is doing really well. Always reminds me, Ta for intervening in my life. And ta. And I'm not saying that so as to say I'm better than other people. Hey, my contribution is better, been over 900 schools, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying that I saw it early, the need to serve.
Yeah.
The need to do work without having to be paid to help out in our communities. And I say, what would get us in that position of making a difference is us coming in with the mindset of serving as opposed to money.
And speaking of serving, also the institutions, the correctional service institutions, they are also educational institutions for the left behind young men. I think there's a population of just under 200,000 of them as well. They also need us. They also need a voice. They also need to be visited, just like the children that are studying in universities. They call prisons the University of Life as well. And I believe in the redemptive value of just humanity, and that anyone is redeemable, even those, you know, who might have blood on their hands because of situations in their lives that they could not control. And we also need to think about them as well, because as much as we're trying to lift everyone with a rising tide, we need to make sure that that rising tide lifts even the boats that have holes in them.